The tone was still there at 4 in the morning, and it was the wrong kind of clean. Mara Okonjo had run the interference filter twice. Both times, the narrowband spike at 1420 MHz stayed put on the waterfall, a hairline thread of light drifting slowly rightward across an ocean of noise. Nothing in nature radiates that narrowly. Ovens don't. Phones don't. And the drift was wrong for the building. It moved with the sky, not with the floor beneath her chair. She had spent 11 years telling nervous grad students that every candidate signal turns out to be us. She believed it. She'd built a career on the boring answer being the true one. So she reached for the one test that always ended it and pointed the dish away. The line vanished. Clean. Instant. Gone. Exactly the way a real sky source should behave when you look somewhere else. Interference doesn't do that. Interference follows you. Mara sat very still and let the empty waterfall scroll for 90 seconds, and something in her chest began to tighten in a way she resented. She swung the dish back. The line returned in the same channel at the same drift as if it had been waiting politely. She checked the dispersion next, because that was the thing you couldn't fake from a parking lot. The low frequencies arrived late, delayed by plasma. The signal had crossed a great deal of interstellar space to reach her, and it had come from somewhere real. She woke Idris Vance at 5. He arrived unshaven and irritable, and stopped talking the moment he saw the cadence plot. By dawn, they had the bit boundaries, which is always the hard part, not the cipher, just knowing where anything begins. What resolved out of it made Idris laugh. Once, badly. A preamble. Then a pulsar map. 14 spinning stars, each one listed by its rotation period, arranged as a fan of lines meeting at a single point. The oldest trick in the book. We put it on the Pioneer plaques in 1972, because it's the only address system that works for anyone, anywhere. That's ours, Idris said. That's our format. Mara was already tracing the fan to where the lines converged. The lines met on Earth, not near it, on it, inside the error bars of the building they were sitting in. Idris said the obvious thing, because someone had to. A signal from us, reflected off something 20 light years out, would come home looking exactly like this. 40-year round trip. Perfect explanation. Mara pulled the transmission logs anyway. The facility had never sent a directed beam. Nothing outbound in the whole archive. Not once, not by accident. There was nothing out there to bounce. She remembers thinking, very calmly, that she should be frightened, and noticing that she wasn't yet. That came later. First came the timestamp. Pulsars are the galaxy's clocks, and they lose time. Slowly, predictably, measurably, every one of them winding down at a rate you can look up. So the periods written into a message are a date. Read the clocks, compare them to yours, and you know when it was made. Idris ran the 14 against the current ephemeris 3 separate times, and each time he got a number he refused to say out loud. Mara said it for him. The clocks in the message were slower than the clocks in the sky. Further along, spun down by roughly 40 additional years. Whoever encoded this had measured those pulsars in a year that had not happened. They stopped arguing about mechanism after that, because there wasn't one worth arguing about. Nothing in physics carries information backwards. Mara knew that better than most. She taught it. So she did the only useful thing left and looked at what the message actually was, structurally, before worrying about what it meant. And the structure told her everything. Repeated. Redundant. Low bandwidth. Every block sent 4 times, each copy carrying its own checksum. That's not how you send a greeting. That's how you transmit when you assume most of what you send will be lost. When you have very little power, very little time, and you would rather send one sentence 1,000 times than 1,000 sentences once. It was a distress format. Somebody was screaming slowly on purpose so that at least a fragment would survive. The payload was 3 things. A position, which was theirs, a countdown, which was running, and which resolved, when Idris converted it, hands unsteady, to something under 19 hours, and an instruction. The instruction was short enough to fit on one line of the screen, and it took Mara a long moment to understand why Idris had gone the color of paper. It named a procedure, not a vague warning about meddling. A specific, sequenced procedure: acquire, verify off-target, request independent confirmation, transmit coordinates to a second facility for corroboration. step by step. It was the standard verification protocol. It was, to the letter, exactly what they had been doing since 4 o'clock that morning. The instruction was, do not complete it. Mara read it 11 times. She was, by temperament, a woman who distrusted meaning, who had built an entire professional life on the discipline of finding the dull explanation and preferring it. And here was the dull explanation, sitting right there, still available. Coincidence? Elaborate hoax. Some failure mode of the ionosphere nobody had characterized yet. The way those long-delayed echoes in 1927 still hadn't been explained. She could take it. She wanted to take it. But the protocol required corroboration from a second observatory, and corroboration required sending them the coordinates. The message was not warning her about the future. It was warning her about the next 20 minutes. Idris wanted to send it. His reasoning was clean, and Mara couldn't break it. If the message is real, it came from a history in which they sent it, so refusing changes nothing, or worse, erases the sender. And if the sender is erased, there was never a warning. And if there was never a warning, they send it anyway. Every road ran through the same gate, a warning that works cannot exist. It cannot argue you out of the moment that produced it. So we're not deciding whether to believe it, Idris said. We're deciding whether to close the loop. Outside, the sky over the dish was going gray, 14 hours on the countdown. Mara asked him what he thought was on the other end of it, and he wouldn't answer. She did neither. That was the part nobody predicted, least of all her. She didn't send the coordinates, and she didn't delete the file. She wrote everything down. The drift rates, the dispersion, the 14 periods, the countdown, all of it. By hand, on paper, and sealed it. And drove home at 8 in the morning past people going to work who had no idea. Because there was a fourth possibility she couldn't stop turning over. If the message came from 40 years ahead, then somewhere ahead of her, a version of herself was building a transmitter. Alone, with almost no power, sending one sentence 1,000 times into the past. And that woman had known exactly which words would stop her. The words that stopped Mara Okonjo were, do not complete it. 19 hours later, the countdown reached 0 and nothing happened. No event, no collapse. Just a Tuesday, and the tone still on the waterfall, patient as ever, still repeating its 4 redundant copies to an empty room. Mara went back the next week, and the signal was gone, not degraded, gone, as though the transmitter had been switched off, or had never been switched on. Idris left the field within the year. He said it was funding. Mara stayed. She stayed 20 more years, and then 20 more, and she never once transmitted anything, and she never told anyone why, and the paper stayed sealed in a drawer she opened more often than she admitted. Here is what she could never settle. If a warning arrives and you obey it, you can never know whether it was true. Obedience destroys the evidence. She had spent her whole life insisting that the most likely explanation for any signal from deep space is that it's us. And that was right. It was us, just not yet. Nothing in known physics lets a message travel backwards through time, and every candidate humanity has ever recorded has been explained or is still quietly waiting. This one is a story, but the pulsar map is on the screen behind these words, 14 lines converging on a point, and the periods encoded in it are not the ones we measure today. Read the clocks yourself, then decide what year you're being spoken to from.